Welcome back to another episode of Esports Mastery. My name is Brendan from the Chiefs Esports Club, and today we are back at Bond University in the Esports Hub.
My name's Lisa from Bond University, and today we're very excited to introduce you to Dr. James Birt, an international expert in the field of educational technology and extended reality. James is also an associate professor here in the Creative Media Studies at Bond University and is the perfect expert to provide us knowledge at the intersection of gaming and academia. James, thank you so much for joining us today.
More than welcome. I'm totally excited to be here.
Thanks for being here.
I guess helping students, what are some practical tips students can actually do to manage their academic commitments and also their gaming commitments as well?
That's a good one. I like that one. Well, I'll give you a bit of a historical account of myself as a gamer. So I did a PhD and it was not in gaming. I wished it was, but actually it was in software engineering and artificial intelligence. But part of that was that I loved playing World of Warcraft. And so I would spend many hours playing said World of Warcraft and looking at ways of optimizing my time to be able to both game as well as do the process of the PhD. Some people used to say that I did my PhD more in optimization of World of Warcraft than perhaps optimization of source code, which is actually what my PhD was on. But look, some real tips there is you have to balance. So I may have probably tipped over more into the play rather than the actual doing, and I think that's something that we have to be really mindful of, is being caught up in the game, being caught up in that fun and excitement, but actually knowing that we really do still have to do the work, do the academic side, do the studies, and that gaming really has to kind of take that second path to the academics in order for us to make those achievements. However, if one is a professional esports person, then it really then changes that slightly in the sense that, you know, we do need to look at them as sports people, as athletes, and that in particular at Bond, being able to have our sort of support mechanisms around them as elite sports people and being able to balance both the sport and the academics. And it kind of changes that equation slightly, although I would still fit with that first part, which is you need to put your academics first.
Yeah, fair enough. As a veteran World of Warcraft player myself, I totally understand. So we talk about these effective strategies for really managing your time and prioritization when you are living that balanced life between, you know, trying to be a pro gamer and also balancing your academics. In your experience, what are some really effective strategies to help these students?
So I think gamers are really good at strategy and they're also really good at prioritization. So I think naturally that comes to them. So it's about looking at what are the things that you have to get done in a given week, but also looking much further ahead. Essentially, you're a project manager.
Yeah.
Now, depending on the game you do, you might already have those skills that you're already applying within that game sense. You're looking at the strategies, you're looking at how much time you're spending on certain tasks, you're looking at the various resources that you have available. And really, that's what you're trying to do when you're balancing between the academic side and the strategic play and sports side. So what are some real tips that we need to explore there? You need to look at how much time you've got available to you. Are you doing competitions or are you doing it more for pleasure? If it's from the competition side, when are my competitions happening? How much time do I need to put in for training, etc.
Yeah.
But then it's also looking at, well, what assignments do I have? Do I have to speak to the academic staff or the institution to be able to prioritise my sport and my play alongside the assessment that needs to be done? But at the end of the day, it's time management.
Yeah.
It's looking at how much time would I have to spend to do that task versus how much time do I have to do training versus how much time do I have to do these very social or content creation activities or whatever it happens to be to promote my play alongside that. And really, it's a balancing act alongside the institution and your academic partners. No one's going to say to you, don't undertake your professional sporting endeavours or your athletic endeavours, but it's about a compromise and a discussion and communication lines to be able to have those conversations as a professional, as an adult, in saying, these are my commitments, this is my other commitments from the academic side, and being able to negotiate those commitments. Understanding that both are equally important, and also understanding that there is a lifetime essentially associated with esports, and one does need to, especially in the pro side of things, prioritise those aspects. But there is an end of life to those, and one also needs to have that educational aspiration as well.
Yeah, you make a really good point about that content creation and marketing side of being a pro player, and it's a lot of aspiring players and even pro players on our team don't really understand that to be a well-renowned pro, a lot of it is having a brand, a personal brand as well. And a lot of people don't understand the time that goes into managing your own brand and marketing yourself. So that's something that also that I would recommend people really try and prioritize as well, is like, okay, how much time do I set aside to really build my own brand as a player to make myself more marketable to esports teams?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we often talk about the esports player or the professional, but there's so many other opportunities out there within the esports business. James, do you have any advice that you would give to students or gamers who would like to pursue a career in esports?
So I think really what I would say there is that there is almost every type of business and job role that you could think of is within esports, as it is in other types of sporting endeavours, whether it's in finance, whether it's in marketing, whether it's in nutrition, dietetics, whether it's in psychology, health. I mean, literally every single market is covered by esports, as it would be in any what one would deem as traditional sport. So what I would say is that anyone who's got an interest in gaming, in professional athletic technology-based endeavours, really should explore something like esports, because it is really, I think, right at the cusp of that emergent stage. And so what I would be saying to young people looking at this as a career is, A, you've got to have passion for the sport like you would in any sport. The next thing I would say is that it really does come down to your discipline. You still have to be a good psychologist, a good dietitian. You've got to be good in finance or business, or indeed athletic gaming, in order to pursue those various roles. But second, you need to have deep discipline, understanding and domain experience within that sector. Just like one would in soccer or in football or tennis or whatever it is, they have a specialisation into those types of sports. The same thing is going to happen in esports. Now, what's interesting there is the plethora of esports. And I think that's something that is often not spoken about, because esport is often umbrellaed under one big umbrella of esport, but there is a multitude of different esports, like there is a multitude of sport, and every one of them has its own nuances, and every one of them, in a sense, has its own opportunities for people to come in and work within those particular sports and brands.
Yeah, that's something that we always advocate for as well. And a lot of people don't realise the amount of industry jobs there are that are relative to traditional jobs as well. Like you said, business and marketing. And marketing and social media marketing is a really, really good example. Because not everyone, myself included, has what it takes to go pro and be a pro athlete. So my career started in esports is in volunteer roles, in management positions and things like that. And it's a lot of industry knowledge that people can learn from getting in and getting amongst it. So the next question I have for you, James, and I apologise if it is a bit of a spicy question, but what can universities and academic institutions do better to support their students who are looking to go pro and balance academic at the same time?
I don't know, but is that spicy?
I don't know if you were getting in trouble or anything.
No. Look, at Bond University, and I'll use Bond because it's the best example because I'm here, but we treat esports like we do any professional sport. So if you're able to show that you are playing at elite levels, then we have pathways in place through our sporting pathways to enable anyone at that elite level, whether it's swimming, soccer, esports, equestrian, doesn't matter which sport it is, we have those pathways in place to enable those students to pursue their sporting career. So how does that work? It means that you might be able to get things like deferred examinations, deferred assessments. You might be able to undertake less courses in a given semester because your endeavours and your athletic, sporting championships and other things that you're doing are known commodities. Sort of known commodities. Yeah. You at least have time to understand it. Now, I appreciate that there's qualifying rounds, and I appreciate that there is tournaments that you may say that you're going to go to, or at least earmark, and you may not get there because you may have lost out in various heats or whatever it is. But there's at least a timetable of tournaments that you're playing in. That is a known commodity, which you would pass through the director of sport and also the various sporting groups within an institution. And then it's a negotiation where you say, these are the elite levels that I'm doing. Now, backyard play or non-tournament play, that would be a little bit of a different discussion. That would come under training, the way I would look at that, in which case that really needs to be done in one's own time and not necessarily in the timetabled time of classes, or it's probably not the greatest excuse of I didn't do my homework.
That's my excuse.
Yeah, exactly. But in a way, it can all be negotiated, especially if that's at that elite level, just like we would with any other sport. Now, I can't speak to other institutions because I don't know their policies, but I can speak to our institution and the policies that we have in place for elite sport, of which esport is a sport.
And what are your thoughts, James, in relation to the future of gaming in education, especially in relation to growth and innovation?
So I look at gaming in a multitude of ways. I look at it as competition, and we can see that with things like, esports, etc. But I often look at gaming in other ways. So I've done, games technology type courses. I've done where we integrate gaming as case studies and that sort of thing. But I'm also looking at how gaming can be used, and in particular commercial games can be used in a multitude of ways, from mental health, from clinical psychology. So we have a wonderful project integrating Minecraft through VR to support young people in seeking mental health. It's really interesting to see that in particular with young boys and obviously young girls as well, but with young people, they have an affinity around games and how games can be used as an icebreaker, but also how they can be used in a clinical way in order to support anxiety and other things. So there's an example. I also use esports for critical thinking. So we've been doing a project for a number of years where we use Rocket League for critical thinking. Now, critical thinking is one of those hard ones where everyone says, oh, how do you do it? How do you have a commonality to have something to talk about? Well, games is a great commonality across young people in particular, but it's also popular amongst all demographics. I mean, everyone likes to be a gamer, everyone likes to have a go at something, and having a commonality of a game to play, and then being able to look at strategy and have structured discourse around how would one do better. It's not about winning the game, it's just about having a structured communication on something in common. I think we all agree that we need a lot more common discourse across the world at the moment, and I think games might be a wonderful opportunity to explore that. And I guess that segues into things like games in the Olympics, some of the work I've done in research looking at esports and diplomacy, again around that idea of sports and diplomacy. And so there's a multitude of different avenues that commercial gaming, competition, and in particular different genres of games can have across a multitude of different types of disciplines. Again, as I said before, it might be the study of games, it might be the implementation and development of games, but it might simply just be using games for different purposes outside the scope of perhaps what the game was intended for. Originally it was entertainment, now it can be used in other ways. And let's face it, one of the things we try to do in education is to really make education exciting for people. And what better way of making education exciting than to integrate it through games?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So to just build off that question as well, in your experience, what skills and knowledge do you think is most beneficial to not just gamers, but people who are looking to get into the industry as it is taking that leap into innovation?
So I think, again, I would say that gamers come with almost an innate ability to compartmentalise, to rapidly solve problems, to critically analyse situations, to be able to communicate in short bursts that communicate message in effective strategic ways. So there's a lot of already existing skill sets that a gamer brings, whether that's into education, the workforce, or other areas. I mean, there's a number of different workforces that look at the skill sets around gamers because they're the skill sets that they're actually looking for in terms of things like strategic communications, in leadership, in being able to solve problems rapidly. And I think that's a really key one, is real-time problem solving.
Yeah.
Not being able to take something away, work on it for 4 weeks, come back and say, here it is. It's about, here is a problem, solve the problem now, and be able to give me several different solutions. And I think that's what gaming, and in particular strategic, maybe FPS games and others, really lend themselves well to, because you're always having to react and then change and pivot. And they're sort of those critical skills that a lot of industry is looking for. So I think they come in innate in a way. Then it's about, okay, so you've got some innate skills, you've got these things, but it's all well and good having a natural capacity. But it's then, how does one evidence that beyond simply the play of games and what we would call knowledge transfer? So it's about being able to transfer a set of skills to other domains and problems that are perhaps outside the avenue of gaming. And that's really what, you know, education and industry is looking for, is you come in with those raw skills, raw talent, raw capacity, you undertake that translation of those skills and leveling up those skills through acquisition of knowledge, through study, through assessment and other things. And then it's then about packaging yourself, branding yourself and selling yourself to industry, be that through networking, which is 100% what I would recommend. And that's something that gamers are quite good at, is networking, whether it's networking online or networking in various different types of events. Definitely in that online process, they're excellent at being able to use new technology, Discord, other types of things that allows them to understand new ways of working, especially remote working. But then I think where there's probably some areas and avenues to build on is that ability then to package all that up and be face to face with people. And I think from a number of the industry advisories that I sit on in my role and with the work that I do with industry, that communication person to person is something that's really lacking. I'm not saying lacking with Bond graduates, but I'm just saying in general lacking out in the industry. And I wonder if that's something that gamers in particular can work on. I know myself. I mean, I was a gamer. I was very introverted as a youngster, and it wasn't until I started working and presenting and teaching and sort of being amongst humans, so to speak, that I was then able to really shine through my own personality, which was there, but perhaps I didn't have the opportunity because I was gaming or whatever it happened to be. Now, you've got to remember, in my era, it was all typing through chat and that sort of stuff, and that's obviously shifted to a lot more voice-based communication, and so there's a lot more active communication happening and perhaps not so much mediated communication that it was perhaps in my era of graduating uni and going out and getting work. But I think that's something that can be worked on.
Yeah.
And it's something that the industry is screaming out for.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Really informative answer. Thank you.
I guess on that theme as well, looking forward 5 or 10 years, what are the future trends that you see within the gaming industry?
Well, I mean, there's always going to be blips and there's always going to be ups and downs. And you know, the gaming industry at the moment, from a development perspective, is in a bit of a lull.
Yeah.
But you've got to look at things as trends. So if you look at it as a trend happening over a period of 10 years, then the industry is booming and it's growing, year on year. Esports, very similar type of thing. It's just like any type of new technology or new industry. You're always going to have your ups and downs. You're always going to have different players emerging in the industry. You're going to always get your charlatans and your pump and dump schemes and all of that stuff that happens. I mean, it's just a given with any type of entrepreneurial, new, emerging industry. But the trend is there, and I would say that the next 5 years we are going to see steady growth. We are going to see a lot of those charlatans exiting out of the communities, and that the community themselves is going to have to start to drive more from a grassroots, more from different sectors than perhaps what it was being driven from, which was typically a business sector, broadcast sector, and perhaps a big tech sector. So it's going to come a lot more onto the actual grassroots. Now, that's where I see that there are some gaps, and it is something that we at Bond and others are really trying to support, is grassroots gaming, grassroots esports, grassroots STEM, whatever it is in relation to gaming as a general discipline and domain. But it is going to take a lot of work by education providers, by governments, by sporting organisations, etc., to recognise that this isn't going away. It is only going to grow. That young people, Gen Alpha, etc., like my kids, 11 and 8, they are, and female, young girls, they are 100% gamers. I mean, what they do in an afternoon is jump on Roblox, chat to their friends, game, play other different types of games, and their whole relationship with their friends outside the school environment is games and singing and laughing and playing a game and doing something else, and it's all mediated through that. And I think that is not going away. That's only growing, and that connection then into social media, into the way that industry sort of works within this new space. That's a real change and shift in mindset. We've seen how traditional broadcasting has really had to adapt itself through streaming and various things. Well, this new generation doesn't look at all at traditional approaches to media delivery, and in some ways education. And so we all need to be mindful of what's happening. Obviously, as I said, the sector will continue to grow, but its influence will grow even more. And that's just going to be year-on-year growth. So we need to have a better understanding of what is the phenomena, what is gaming, why is it popular, what is esports, why is it popular, why is esports different to gaming, and that's a really key one, because esports is very different to gaming. It is all about competition, and it is all about elitism within a certain type of game. That game might be a very old game, StarCraft 2 for instance, or it might be in a very new game. And so it's being able to differentiate what those sectors are, and then being able to work within that to balance education, industry, jobs, communication, friendships, etc., etc. And so I think the role of the education groups is really to both study that, to research that, to analyse that, but then to also communicate that they are open themselves to integration of those things into what one would have considered a traditionalist type of industry, but really, and I look at Bond and others, but in particular Bond, really being able to break through those barriers of perhaps that traditionalist view and actually embrace a lot of this into not only delivery of content or integration into new ways of thinking, but seeing esports as an avenue for elite sport and play, being able to use esports as a way of connecting to people, communicating, and also having the courage to build facilities around esports, in particular in Australia, where it is still nascent, it is still growing. There's not many esports facilities in Australian universities, but the high schools, the primary schools, they're growing into this area. So we have to keep ahead of the game. And then if you look overseas, especially in the United States, Europe and Asia, it is enormous, especially in Asia, where it really is the number one sport and the growth of that. And we cannot, underlook any of those things, because you can see the future by looking ahead at other places.
Yeah, I truly agree that I think it is a collaborative effort as well between everyone in the space to really create those sustainable pathways. So it might not have an influence on it now, but like you said, the industry isn't going anywhere, and in fact it's growing. So we need to ensure that that next generation of up and coming esports talent really has like a healthy way to achieve these goals, whereas previously in the past, it's sort of been a bit of the Wild West.
James, thank you so much for sharing your expertise, advice and insights and enthusiasm. Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. Cheers.
Thanks, James.
Game on.